This is Nestor Hernandez, a man who took the sacred halls of a hospital he know, where lives are supposed to begin, and turned it into a crime scene that felt more like the final act of a slasher movie. On October 22, 2022, at Methodist Dallas Medical Center in Texas, two women, social worker Jacqueline Pokua and nurse Katie Annette Flowers, showed up for work like it was any other day. They had no idea that a ticking time bomb disguised as a man was about to walk into their lives and end them. What set him off? Was it gang beef? Revenge? Mental instability? Nope. Try this. He had a fight with his girlfriend about whether he was the father of her newborn. That's it. That's all it took. And with that, two innocent women were gone just like that. In today's deep dive, we're unpacking how a man with a rap sheet longer than a CVS receipt ended up at a hospital with a gun while under active parole supervision. We're talking prison romance, violent history, jaw-dropping failures of the justice system, and the aftermath that left Texas shocked and mourning. Welcome to Mystery Unveiled, True Crime. Thank you, my viewers. A special thank you to our loyal subscribers for joining us as we uncover the darkest, most gripping true crime stories every single day. Your support fuels our mission to bring you both infamous cases and chilling untold mysteries. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. When Nestor Hernandez was just another small-time criminal with big-time rage. Before bullets flew through hospital walls, before blood stained the floor of a maternity ward, Nestor Hernandez was just a kid on a fast track to nowhere. Born in Texas and raised in chaos, he was the kind of guy who seemed to collect bad decisions like they were Pokemon cards. But this wasn't your average, grew up in a rough neighborhood story. Nestor wasn't just influenced by his environment, thrived in the worst parts of it. Petty crimes turned into serious ones. Misdemeanors escalated into felonies. And by the time he hit his mid-20s, Nestor had already stacked a criminal record that screamed, "Future Headline." The real kicker: love brought him company behind bars. Upenter Selena Saldivar, Nestor's girlfriend and co-pilot in one of their most notorious early crimes. In 2015, the lovebirds teamed up for a good old-fashioned armed robbery. Nothing says romantic getaway like ski masks and felony charges, right? When the dust settled, Nestor got slapped with a 7-year prison sentence, while Selena got 5. Different cells, same future time. Get out. Maybe start over. But here's the part where the system fumbles the bag. Nestor was released early. Not because he was reformed. Not because he completed some intense rehabilitation program. Nope. Just your usual parole deal. And what did the parole board do to keep him in check? You guessed it, they gave him an ankle monitor. Because, clearly, GPS bling is all it takes to stop a man with a violent track record. The couple reunited after release. It wasn't all love and second chances, though. Their relationship was volatile. Fights were constant. Accusations flew like fists. But somehow, through all the drama, Selena got pregnant. By October 2022, Selena was in labor, giving birth at Methodist Dallas Medical Center. And Nestor? He was granted special permission to visit the hospital. A man with a history of robbery, parole violations, and violent outbursts was allowed to walk into a hospital, past security, to see his girlfriend and newborn child, all while armed with a loaded gun. Because what could possibly go wrong? The argument started almost immediately. He accused Selena of cheating. He questioned the baby's paternity. His voice rose. Her nerves shattered. But no one, not the nurses, not the doctors, not even security, knew just how dangerous this man was until it was too late. Alright, so imagine this. You're a nurse working a shift on a calm Saturday morning at Methodist Dallas Medical Center. You're checking vitals, pushing meds, probably dreaming about lunch. And then, in walks a man with a criminal record long enough to rival a Tarantino script, Nestor Hernandez. Only, no one really knows just how dangerous this dude is. Not the staff, not the other patients, and not the two women who are about to lose their lives. October 22, 2022. It's supposed to be one of the happiest days of Selena's life. She just gave birth to a baby girl, and thanks to some baffling twist of parole logic, Nestor got special permission to be there. Even Thou again, let's not 4G these out on active parole, wearing an ankle monitor, and has a history of violence like it's on his LinkedIn profile. Nestor arrives at the hospital around 10:20 a.m. He's visibly agitated. Staff notice that he's tense, but hey, new dads are allowed to be emotional, right? Except, this isn't nerves. This is rage coiled up and ready to explode. He goes to the maternity ward, enters Selena's room, and immediately begins arguing with her. According to hospital reports, things escalate fast. Nestor accuses her of infidelity. He starts yelling, claiming the baby might not even be his. And then he pulls out a gun. Let me say that again for the people in the back. A man with a loaded firearm walked into a hospital, on parole, wearing an ankle monitor, and still managed to start waving a gun around like he was in an action movie. Now the staff are in full panic mode. Jacqueline Pourquoi, a 45-year-old social worker, enters the room to check on Selena and the baby, completely unaware of what's going down inside. And just like Faith shoots her. No warning, no hesitation. A single shot to the head. She drops to the floor. Then comes Katie Annette Flowers, a 63-year-old nurse who hears the commotion and runs in trying to help. And guess what? He shoots her too. Another shot, another innocent life gone. The madness doesn't stop there. Selena, terrified and covered in blood, somehow manages to shield the newborn from the chaos. Nestor grabs the phone, FaceTimes his family, and starts saying things like, "I just killed her," and "I'm sorry." Yeah, this guy is mid-homicide and decides it's time for a video chat. After fatally shooting social worker Jacqueline Pourquoi and nurse Katie Annette, Hernandez was confronted by Methodist Hospital Sergeant Robert Rangel. Rangel shot Hernandez in the leg, causing him to retreat into the hospital room. Following a brief standoff, police were called the moment the first shot rang out. The hospital goes into lockdown. Security is scrambling, people are running, babies are crying, it's a full-blown nightmare. And while that's happening, Nestor is still inside the room, holding the gun, pacing, talking to Selena, holding the baby at one point. This man just murdered 2 hospital workers and is now having a meltdown in the same room where a newborn baby lies a few feet away. You couldn't write this in fiction without editors screaming, "That's too unrealistic." Meanwhile, Dallas police officers arrive and prepare to breach the hospital. The SWAT team's called. Negotiators are on standby. It's a standoff now. After what feels like an eternity, officers convince Nestor to surrender, and miraculously somehow he doesn't kill anyone else. They get him into custody. The gun? Recovered. The ankle monitor? Still attached, like a twisted reminder of the system that totally failed to protect anyone from what just happened. 2 innocent women dead. 1 newborn left to grow up in the shadow of a father who committed murder on his birthday. And the world starts asking, how did this happen? The hospital is now basically a war zone. 2 women are dead. A newborn baby just witnessed his father become a double murderer. And the suspect Nestor Hernandez is still inside, armed, unstable, and surrounded by law enforcement. You'd think this is where the story hits pause, but nah, this is where things get even crazier. Let's talk about the timeline. It all happened fast. From the moment Nestor pulled out his gun to the second those poor women hit the floor, it was over in minutes. But the standoff? That dragged. Selena, the new mother, is trapped in that room with him, and Nestor's behavior is all over the place. First he's crying, then shouting, then holding the baby like he's trying to prove he's still a father. At one point, he even blames Selena for everything, saying if she hadn't cheated, this wouldn't have happened. Classic narcissistic meltdown. And this is where things go from unhinged to straight-up horror film. While police are setting up their perimeter, they learn that Nestor is still wearing his ankle monitor, meaning they could track him in real time. Let that sink in. A man on parole, in a hospital, with a gun wearing a GPS ankle monitor, and no one stopped him from doing this. How? That's a question we'll circle back to later. But for now, let's get back to the tension building up outside that hospital room. Dallas Police Department Special Response Team is setting up a breach. Negotiators are on the phone with Nestor, trying to de-escalate. Inside, Selena's using every ounce of courage she has to keep things calm. Her baby is in her arms, the bodies of 2 women lie nearby, and the man she thought she loved, he's a walking time bomb. Eventually, after what feels like forever, Nestor starts to cool down. Maybe it was the weight of what he did. Maybe it was fatigue. Or maybe it was realizing there was no way out. Whatever the reason, he finally agrees to surrender. He puts the gun down. Officers move in. Nestor is taken into custody without a fight. And just like that, the horror ends. But the aftermath? Oh, that was just beginning. Inside the hospital, detectives and forensic teams start piecing together the bloody trail. Meanwhile, news spreads like wildfire. Media vans park outside. Reporters are live on the scene. People across the nation ask the same question. Why was this man even allowed in the hospital? We're talking about a guy with a long criminal history, one who'd just gotten out of prison. He was on parole for aggravated robbery. And his rap sheet? Let's just say it could wallpaper an apartment. Here's what makes your blood boil. This dude was released early from a 7-year sentence, His girlfriend, Selena, was also convicted in the same robbery case, but she only got 5 years. They were literally prison lovers. Bonnie and Clyde, if Clyde had no impulse control and Bonnie just wanted to give birth in peace. Despite everything, Nestor was granted permission by the parole board to visit the hospital and be with Selena during the birth. There were rules, of course. He was supposed to be escorted, supervised, monitored. But guess what? No escort, no supervision, no enforcement. He was just there, on his own, with a loaded weapon. And the result? 2 families destroyed. 2 women, Jacqueline Pourquoi and Katie Annette Flowers, brutally gunned down in a place that's supposed to heal people. Both victims were beloved by co-workers. Jacqueline, the social worker, had a gentle soul and a heart for helping new mothers. Katie, the nurse, was just months from retirement. They weren't just staff. They were caregivers, heroes, and their lives were cut short in seconds. As Nestor sat in jail awaiting trial, public outrage exploded. Social media lit up. Hashtags were trending. Everyone wanted answers. And while the DA's office was building its case, another truth became clear. This wasn't just a crime. It was a failure of the entire system. So, Nestor Hernandez is now sitting behind bars, facing 2 murder charges, and the entire city of Dallas is asking, how the hell did this happen? Let's rewind the tape. Because this wasn't some one-time snap. This wasn't an out-of-nowhere crime. No, this was the finale of a long, violent, build-up-on. The system had plenty of chances to stop. Nestor had a rap sheet going back years. Not speeding tickets or petty theft, we're talking serious, violent crime. He was convicted of aggravated robbery after holding up a man and beating him with a gun. That earned him 7 years behind bars. But here's the plot twist. He didn't serve all 7. Due to early release and parole, Nestor was out after serving only part of that time. And his girlfriend, Selena, remember her? The one he later accused of cheating? She was also in on that robbery. She got 5 years. Yeah, these 2 were a real ride-or-die couple. Until the die part became literal. Once out of prison, Nestor didn't exactly walk the straight path. His parole officers knew this guy wasn't stable. He'd had multiple violations, was aggressive, and had made threats toward his girlfriend before. But for some reason, every time he crossed a line, the consequences were, let's just say, weak sauce. He wore a GPS ankle monitor. That should have been a red flag system, right? The guy couldn't even go to the gas station without someone knowing. So how the hell did he get into a hospital with a loaded gun? Turns out, no one was watching. No escort, no supervision, no check-ins. And despite his violent history, the Texas Department of Criminal Justice approved his request to visit Selena at Methodist Dallas Medical Center. That visit was supposed to be supervised. Instead, it turned into a double homicide. Now let's talk about the warning signs. Prior to the shooting, Nestor had physically assaulted Selena. He'd accused her of cheating, threatened her life, and showed signs of mental instability. There were calls to police, reports filed. Domestic violence allegations stacked like pancakes at an all-you-can-eat diner. But time after time, the system just shrugged. Parole officers logged concerns but never issued a full revocation. Mental health evaluations? Barely done. Weapons checks? Missed. He wasn't even supposed to have a gun. But hey, clearly someone dropped the ball. The tragic part? This wasn't just predictable, it was preventable. Because Nestor didn't hide who he was. He showed the world over and over again. He was violent, paranoid, and increasingly unstable. And when his girlfriend gave birth to a child he wasn't sure was his, it was like lighting a match next to a powder keg. What happened next was inevitable. And the 2 women who paid for it with their lives? They didn't even know Nestor. They weren't part of his world. They were just doing their jobs. Jacqueline Pourquoi, the social worker, was there to help new moms transition into parenthood, a kind soul with a passion for family care. Katie Annette Flowers, the nurse, had a legendary work ethic and decades of experience under her belt. She was set to retire soon. She had plans. Both gone in seconds because no one stopped the man who should have never been there in the first place. In the days after the murders, Methodist Dallas Medical Center released a statement expressing shock and heartbreak. Vigils were held. Flowers were placed outside the hospital entrance. But behind the public mourning, there was rage. Why didn't the parole system do more? Why wasn't security tighter? Why was Nestor given that chance? These weren't just procedural errors. These were system failures, the kind that cost lives. And when Nestor finally faced a judge, the court didn't see a man who made a mistake. They saw a man with a history of calculated violence, someone who used his second chance to destroy the lives of innocent people. All right, let's talk about the trial. Because if you thought the crime itself was disturbing, wait till you hear how the justice system scrambled to catch up with the chaos it helped create. After Nestor Hernandez was arrested at the hospital alive, by the way, he was charged with capital murder. That's not just your average murder charge in Texas. That's the real deal, the kind that screams life without parole or needle in the arm. The public was pissed. The media exploded. The Dallas police chief called the shooting an abhorrent failure of the system. Even the governor got involved, demanding answers. And the Texas Department of Criminal Justice? They started playing the blame game fast. But let's focus on the courtroom, because this is where things got real. Criminal District Court Judge Chica Anyam presided over the case. She's known for being no-nonsense, straight to the point, and not easily shaken. And when she read through the details, the parole history, the hospital shooting, the lack of supervision, she didn't hold back. During the trial, prosecutors laid out everything. The fact that Nestor was a convicted felon out on parole, that he was wearing a GPS ankle monitor when he brought a loaded gun into a hospital, that he knew what he was doing. He wasn't having a mental breakdown, he was angry and calculated. They showed surveillance footage from the hospital, Nestor pulling the gun from his waistband, the sudden shots, the panic, and then the cold, emotionless pacing in the hospital room. It wasn't just a crime, it was an execution. The prosecution also presented chilling text messages and call logs showing Nestor's growing paranoia towards sullen accusations of cheating, threats, and plans to deal with it. He didn't bring that gun for protection, he brought it to send a message. The defense tried to argue diminished capacity, mental health struggles, emotional distress. They leaned heavily on the newborn baby factor, saying he was overwhelmed by fatherhood, unsure if the baby was his, and spiraling emotionally. But the jury wasn't buying it. They looked at the pattern, the past violence, the ignored parole violations, the lack of remorse. This wasn't a guy caught in a bad moment. This was a man who had been dangerous for a long time, and now everyone knew it. And Judge Anyam? She didn't hesitate. She handed down the maximum sentence, life in prison, without the possibility of parole. No chance of freedom. No appeals that would matter. No future beyond prison walls. Her message was clear. This ends now. The families of Jacqueline Pokua and Katie Annette Flowers were present. They gave victim impact statements, talking about who these women were, not just names in a headline, but real human beings, mothers, sisters, friends. Katie's daughter talked about how her mom always lit up a room and gave everything to her patients. Jacqueline's colleagues shared stories about how she'd stay after hours to make sure every new mother felt supported. And Selena? She gave a quiet, tearful statement too. She was the one who had just given birth and then watched the father of her child become a double murderer right in front of her. She survived, but emotionally, she was destroyed. The trial wasn't just about punishing Nestor. It was a brutal reminder of what happens when systems fail to protect people, when red flags are ignored, when violent men are given freedom without accountability. And yet, even with justice served, it still felt like too little, too late. Because two incredible women were still dead. Because the trauma inside that hospital would linger forever. Because this never had to happen. So, the trial's over. Nestor Hernandez is locked away for life. But the aftermath? That's where the real gut punch lands. Because while the court gave him what he deserved, it didn't erase the fact that this never should have happened in the first place. Let's rewind for a second. The guy had 9 prior arrests. 9. And he was still released on parole, with an ankle monitor to visit a hospital filled with vulnerable people. Wrap your head around that. Naturally, the public went ballistic. The Texas Department of Criminal Justice launched an internal investigation. Turns out they couldn't explain how Hernandez was allowed to visit the hospital unsupervised. That's right. No officer escorted him. He just rolled up, strapped into a maternity ward like he was picking up takeout. Lawmakers didn't waste time either. They proposed bills to tighten parole conditions, especially for violent offenders. You commit armed robbery and assault, you don't get a solo field trip to the maternity ward. Sounds obvious, right? But apparently, the system needed a reminder. Dallas Police Chief Eddie Garcia called for a full review of how parole decisions are made. He went on record saying, this man should have never been out, period. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. Meanwhile, Methodist Dallas Medical Center made big changes. They ramped up security, installed more metal detectors, and changed their visitation policy especially for anyone on parole. You now need state approval to even think about visiting if you've got a record like Hernandez. But none of this brought back the 2 women who died. Jacqueline Pokua was only 45, a dedicated social worker who had just walked into the room to help a new mom when she was gunned down. She didn't get a chance to react. She was just doing her job. Katie Flowers, 63, was a nurse with decades of experience, Everyone loved her. She heard the first shots, rushed in to help, and was shot dead. Heroes, both of them, gone. Their families have become advocates, speaking out at community events, pushing for legislation, demanding real accountability, not just slaps on the wrist or PR apologies. Selena, Nestor's girlfriend and the mother of his child, went completely off the grid. And who could blame her? She gave birth and lost everything in one day. Her name is barely mentioned in official documents, but in reality, she's central to the whole story. A woman caught between love, fear, and unimaginable violence. Even the child, born just hours before the shooting, will grow up knowing that her father is a convicted murderer who killed 2 women in a hospital room moments after she was born. That's a legacy no child should carry. But this is the kind of ripple effect violent crime leaves behind. It doesn't just end with a conviction. It spreads across families, cities, and entire systems. People now look at ankle monitors and parole decisions with way more scrutiny. Hospitals have beefed up protocols. Social workers and nurses are demanding better protection. And as for the justice system, it's been publicly shamed, and rightly so. Because letting a ticking time bomb like Nestor Hernandez walk freely into a hospital wasn't just a failure, it was a catastrophe waiting to happen. This case didn't just shock Texas, it rattled the nation. News outlets across the country covered it. Advocacy groups used it as a rallying cry. You can't ignore red flags. You can't let violent offenders slide through the cracks. And you sure as hell can't underestimate the danger of inaction. By the time Nestor Hernandez was sentenced to life without parole, there wasn't a shred of doubt left in anyone's mind this guy was never going to see freedom again. Good riddance. But the damage? It's permanent. 2 women are dead. A child was born into chaos. A hospital's sense of safety was shattered. And we're left wondering, how many red flags do we need before the system actually does something? Let's talk about Jacqueline Pourquoi. She didn't just die on the job. She died doing what she loved, helping people. That was her life's mission. She was calm, compassionate, and tireless. When her family got the call, it didn't seem real. How could someone so full of light be gunned down in a place meant for healing? Then there's Katie Flowers. This woman was a firecracker, passionate, experienced, respected. She had survived the hardest shifts, trained generations of nurses, and still came to work with a smile. And what did she get in return? A bullet, just for trying to help. That's not just tragic, it's infuriating. Now think about the Childa newborn baby, just hours old, caught in the center of it all. She never got a peaceful first day of life. No soft lullabies, no calm bonding with her parents. Instead, her father was taken away in handcuffs, and her mother was probably still shaking from the horror she witnessed. That child has a story written for her before she could even crawl, one that starts with bloodshed and national headlines. Let's not forget about Selena, Nestor's girlfriend. Yes, she had her own criminal history. Yes, she served time. But on that day, she wasn't the criminal, she was the victim. She was threatened at gunpoint. She lost the father of her child to the prison system, and she might live the rest of her life reliving the screams, the shots, and the smell of gunpowder in a maternity ward. That trauma? It doesn't fade. This entire case is more than just another headline. It's a wake-up call. Because here's what's scary. Nestor Hernandez didn't slip through the cracks. He bulldozed through them. He had a record a mile long. He was violent, manipulative, and unstable. Yet somehow, he still got a pass. He had an ankle monitor, but no one was monitoring him. He was on parole, but no one enforced it. And he had access to a gun, despite his criminal history. How does that happen? Spoiler alert. It happens when systems are lazy, leadership is absent, and lives are reduced to paperwork. And now, people are pissed. They want action. They want change. Because this wasn't just a freak tragedy, it was preventable. So, what's next? Well, legislation is being pushed. Hospitals are increasing security, and parole boards are under a microscope. But let's be honest, it shouldn't take 2 innocent women dying to spark change. The legacy of this case should be more than sadness. It should be reform. Every nurse, every social worker, every parole officer, every judge, they all matter in this story, because they all play a role in either protecting or failing the people they serve. And for those of us telling the story on YouTube, in podcasts, in articles, it's not just about shock value. It's about holding a mirror to a system that needs fixing. Mystery Unveiled True Crime isn't just here to entertain. It's here to ask the hard questions, to keep the memory of Jacqueline and Katie alive, to remind viewers that real lives are at stake. So, as we close the book on Nestor Hernandez, lock him away forever, and throw away the key, don't forget the names of those who paid the ultimate price. Because this wasn't just a crime, it was a lesson. And if we don't learn from it, We're all just waiting for the next one. And there it is. A tragic, rage-inducing story that reminds us how broken things can be when no one's paying attention. If you found the story powerful, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think should have been done differently? Could this have been prevented? You know the drill. This is Mystery Unveiled True Crime, where real stories hit hard and nothing gets sugar-coated. Until next time, stay aware, stay alive.